What happens when a horror film crosses into real life? A group of friends brought 19-year-old waitress Danielle Taylor to a house in the crumbling streets of Flint, Michigan in 2002. They said they were filming something. She assumed it was just a friendly get-together. But by the end of the day, Danielle would be blindfolded, terrified, and uncertain if she'd make it home. The group asserted it was all for a movie. Danielle argued that no one ever told her. What started as a supposed prank would quickly become one of Flint's most disturbing stories. Flint, Michigan, was already experiencing stress in 2002. The streets were filled with an increasing sense of hopelessness, abandoned buildings, and rising crime as a result of years of economic decline. But something that occurred that year had an impact well beyond the boundaries of the city. It started with a 19-year-old Taco Bell employee called Danielle Taylor and a group of people she believed to be her friends. Danielle wasn't anyone famous. Like many young people, she was struggling to make ends meet in a tough city. She had a routine, a job, and a group of people she thought were friends. She didn't give it much thought when one of them invited her to a house on Oklahoma Avenue. They explained they needed her help as they were working on a short film, a horror thriller. Yes, it did sound odd, but it was harmless enough. She had no idea that this was no typical endeavor, and that she was about to take on something much more deadly than she had ever dreamed. Jonathan H. Cockerell, Travis A. Payia, Christina Lum, James Carwile, and Derek Faxlinger were among the individuals who worked on this alleged movie. They were young adults, some in their early 20s and others just out of their teenage years. They might have appeared to outsiders as a bunch of imaginative young people trying to establish themselves in a little, forgotten town. But their actions ultimately made it difficult to differentiate between sadistic cruelty and storytelling. Danielle may have expected a little playful weirdness on the day it all happened. Perhaps a camera, some fake blood, or someone shouting "cut" following a stupid scare. But what she got instead was real fear. The tone changed in a split second. They blindfolded her. She had her hands tied. They got her in a car and took her to a far-off wooded place. Panic hit. She wasn't acting. She wasn't even sure what this was anymore. She didn't think it was a movie, it was a kidnapping. The situation only became even worse once they were in the woods. The group told her she was going to die, yelled threats, and shoved her to the ground. They even declared they were going to bury her alive and started digging a hole. The whole thing was recorded on a camera, and the participants acted out parts they had created for themselves, consisting of audience, directors, and executioners. But Danielle wasn't reading from a script. She was in tears, begging, trying to figure out what was going on. She had a strong belief that her life was coming to an end. To the group, it was a prank, a dark, overbearing stunt meant to shock, perhaps entertain, and later be passed off as part of a horror movie project. For Danielle, however, it was a nightmare that she refused to get involved in. When it was done and they finally let her go, she was traumatized. When she went to the police, they weren't sure what was going on at first. Could this have been a bizarre performance gone wrong? Or was it a crime? As soon as officials obtained the tape, that question was answered. Watching the footage erased any doubts. Danielle had obviously been truly terrified, and the group had deliberately given her the impression that she was in grave danger. One moment stood out. A voice on the tape saying, "We are burying you alive. You are going to die." That couldn't be explained as a harmless joke. It was chilly. The public responded swiftly and angrily. They questioned what sort of people would pull such a stunt and claim it was a prank. Is it a joke to tie someone up, drag them into the woods, and tell them they are going to be killed? These weren't harmless pranksters. These were young people who had gone too far, and now they were being caught by the law. The group was charged with assault and kidnapping. which carried severe penalties under Michigan law, including up to life in prison. Their defense mostly relied on the claim that Danielle had misunderstood it, and that it wasn't meant to be taken seriously because it was all part of a movie. The tape, however, revealed a different story. There were no camera cues, no safe words, and no signs that the actress was ever aware of the act. Danielle spoke about her experience in the following interviews. She talked about how she genuinely thought she was going to die that day, and how scared and confused she was. Long after the event was over, the trauma remained. It changed her life and was more than just a bad memory. Media sources began to refer to it as the Real Blair Witch case, a reference to the found footage genre's popularization by the 1999 horror movie The Blair Witch Project. 3 student filmmakers who had been investigating a local legend when they disappeared in the woods were the fictional characters in that film. The documentary-style film was so realistic to viewers that many thought it was based on real-life events. Pop culture had already made it difficult to differentiate between fact and fantasy, but in Flint, it appeared as though this distinction had been completely destroyed. The comparison stuck. The Flint event featured a handheld camera, forests, and panic, just like the film. But unlike the movie, what happened to Danielle Taylor wasn't fiction. It wasn't a viral video or an innovative marketing effort. It was real. Also, it left scars on all parties, particularly Danielle, that no camera could ever truly portray. Filmmakers quickly became interested in Danielle Taylor's story and the so-called horror film prank after the horrifying events of 2002. The Real Blair Witch, a 2003 documentary by British filmmaker Simon Eggen, tried to reveal the truth about what actually happened in the Flint, Michigan woods. The title wasn't a coincidence. The weird, unsettling fusion of horror and truth that the Flint case had come to be known for was immediately apparent in Eggen's work, which was obviously a nod to the fictional Blair Witch Project. To present an in-depth account of the event, the documentary combined authentic footage, reenactments, and interviews. Police officers, neighbors, and even some participants in the alleged prank were among the people who spoke to viewers about the matter. Despite not being in the movie, Danielle Taylor's presence lingered. Eggen was careful to emphasize her experience by using other people's statements and by playing segments of the real footage that was taken during the incident. The end effect was a spooky, disturbing, and sometimes really unsettling sight to watch. Reactions from audiences were divided. The documentary was praised by some for bringing attention to a troubling case that could have otherwise gone unnoticed. For others, it was exploitative. Even if the reenactments were skillfully done, they seemed too similar to the actual trauma that had taken place. Some viewers felt uneasy when they watched actors mimic Danielle's panic, knowing that the actual material existed and had already permanently damaged her mental health. Whether the movie went too far in dramatizing something that wasn't even fictional was another ethical concern. Could a documentary be respectful and sensational at the same time? Had Eggen gone too far in his quest for storytelling? Even after the credits had rolled, those questions persisted. The prank group had already been subject to legal action, but now the story was evolving into something more. A work of art, a cultural reference, and a chilling reminder of the worst ways in which reality can imitate horror fiction. Boundaries were once again blurred by the real Blair Witch. Just like the original incident, it made people ask, when does art imitate life? And when does it exploit it? The story didn't end with the documentary. Actually, it paved the way for a larger, more concerning discussion about the influence of the media, the blurring of the boundaries between fact and fiction, and who should be held responsible when something goes wrong. After The Real Blair Witch gave renewed attention to the Flint case, many began to question how much of what happened was shaped by something else entirely, the original Blair Witch Project film from 1999. The timing was hard to ignore. Due to its realistic, shaky camera style and frightening atmosphere, that film had become a worldwide sensation. Many people first believed it was real found footage as it was promoted as such. It evolved into more than just a movie for young people who were interested in horror and wanted to make an impression. It's easy to see how it would have served as direct inspiration for a bunch of teenagers or young adults in their early 20s who were trying to come up with something shocking. And in the case of the Flint culprits, it's believed they did just that. This makes one wonder, where does responsibility begin and end? Is it the responsibility of filmmakers when someone takes their work too literally? Or do viewers have to decide between fact and fiction? It's not a simple issue. Stories and films have always had an impact, yet they hardly ever cause trauma in real life. But when a piece of media presents itself as real, as the Blair Witch Project did, it evokes a different response, one that can make it difficult to distinguish between doing and watching. According to psychologists who research the Flint case, young minds can become dangerously desensitized, particularly in groups. The offenders probably didn't believe they were causing long-term damage. They might have thought it was cool or even edgy. However, as specialists note, that is precisely the risk that arises when fiction is presented with an excessive amount of realism and not enough guidance. Legal experts also offered their opinions. The tragedy sparked discussions about warning labels, disclaimers, and how stories are marketed to sensitive audiences, even if movies cannot be held legally responsible for crimes committed in their shadow. The Flint case, through its connection to a popular horror movie, reminded everyone that stories have power, and when fiction leaks into reality, someone almost always gets hurt. The Flint incident served as a terrifying reminder of how quickly fiction can sway reality. It becomes increasingly important to set those borders clearly, as long as the media keeps blurring them. The tale of Danielle Taylor is a chilling illustration of what happens when entertainment overlooks its impact, and when real people are forced to endure someone else's idea of horror. That was all for today. Do not forget to like and subscribe to the Suspense Room to unlock more stories.